This is AI in FinTech, so allow me to introduce our panel. Closest to me, I have Sam Bridges-Sparks, Head of BI Analytics and Strategy at Shawbrook Bank Limited. Next, we have Susanne Chishti, Chair and Founder at FINTECH Circle. Then Babs Akinkugbe, Investments and Technology Director at Lloyds Banking Group. And finally, Mark Watson, TTO at ComplyAdvantage. A warm welcome to our panel, please. And I actually think we had a whoop at the start of a panel, so this is a strong start to our day. Now, you all know the drill for everyone who was here yesterday. I love my guests just to do 30 seconds on who they are, why they're here, just so we all get to know each other. So, Sam, if you'd be so kind to kick us off.
Yeah, thank you. So, Sam Bridges-Sparks, so Shawbrook Bank. I expect many of you haven't heard of us, so we're kind of a mid-sized specialist lender. We don't compete with the big boys like Lloyds over here. So, Head of BI, which basically means I'm the data and AI nerd there, and the commercial strategy of things. So, yeah, lots of strategy is related to AI, ironically.
I'm glad you didn't say data and AI rock star, because then I would have had to ask you to leave. Anyway, Susanne.
Yes, hi, I'm Susanne Chishti. I'm the founder and chair of FINTECH Circle. We are an investor network where we invest in FinTech startups. I'm also a board member at a UK bank called Crown Agents Bank, where we focus on global payments and foreign exchange, and an advisory board member at a corporate venture capital fund at a Raiffeisen Bank International in Vienna.
Thank you, Susanne. Babs.
Yeah, I'm Babs Akinkugbe. I'm investment platform director for Lloyds Banking Group, a part of Scottish Widows, which is a member of the Lloyds Banking Group. I look after all the technology there from a CIO perspective, and we are now going down the AI route. So very, very interested and privileged to be here.
Thank you. Last but not least, Mark.
Thank you. My name is Mark Watson. I'm here from ComplyAdvantage. We're a regulatory technology software company. So if you sign up for a credit card, you get screened. That will go through software like ours. If you try to make a payment, that gets screened. It goes through software like ours. If the fintech with whom, or financial company with whom you're dealing, has to report to regulators, that goes through software like ours. So we build that. These days I run actually both product and tech, so experience both sides of the Civil War. Yeah, that's me. Thank you.
Thank you very much, and I loved how you described that. Thank you very much, and a warm welcome to all of you. So let's start with the fintech landscape and how the sector's transforming as more people adopt AI. I know when I first started hosting events on this theme sort of 4 or 5 years ago, AI was mentioned, but it was more of a footnote. It wasn't a primary point of discussion. Now it very much is. Sam, if I could start with you, how do you feel the landscape is changing? And I know we could do an entire panel on this particular question. How has the landscape changed for you?
Yeah, sure. So obviously I wouldn't be true to myself if I didn't ask ChatGPT what it thought before I came. And I kind of agreed with it. So it kind of relates to this idea that all the kind of struggles that fintech has and that ability to scale quickly, AI is a huge accelerator in that space. And then I'm obviously on the other side where we're banking, making use of fintech partners, where all our troubles are being strung with technical debt and the inability to change. AI can possibly solve that problem. So I think we're seeing a lot of kind of convergence in this area, and I think that it'll become much more of a partnership model over time, maybe than just kind of a SaaS provider kind of piece that we see quite often. Personally, I think SaaS is in, probably the biggest danger of kind of disruption. Why pay someone to build some simple stuff? Babs and I were having a quick discussion earlier. My wife's not technical literate. She can knock up a website, a database, in a matter of minutes nowadays, right? Who knows if it works, but we'll gloss over that. I think it's a convergence of these kind of relationships, much more as a partner model, and that's how we're seeing it at Shawbrook, particularly into kind of niche areas. I think this generalist fintech model, personally, is a difficult space. Some of the frontier companies like OpenAI, Claude, their out-the-box capability is progressing far quicker than anyone can keep up in that generous space. So, yeah, for what we look in, definitely fintech partnerships, a niche, obviously in banking, particularly underwriting, and how they're adopting and enabling AI in that space. Much more coming together.
Thank you. Susanne.
I would say, on one side, it's a big challenge for us all to keep up. There are so many WhatsApp groups now, there's so much information on AI, so many reports being issued almost on a weekly basis, and just to keep up as an entrepreneur, as an investor is really difficult. And we hosted a FinTech CEO dinner last week where we asked our FinTech CEOs how they approach the topic of AI, and especially from the lens of the investor community, because lots of investors only want to invest in AI companies now, or AI-first companies. And so fintech companies think about, can AI just embed us? Can it just empower us, make us more efficient, cut costs? Or can we become an AI-first company? But then again, what does it mean, to be AI-first? And so people refer to the Y Combinator and how there we talk about, having a company consisting just of one or two people, or a few people, a small team, and then lots of agents supporting various tasks, which are supervised, by the humans and by the leadership team. And so what our discussion showed, which was very private under Chatham House rules, that to some extent it's still very much a hype. So it's we talk more than we actually do. On the other hand, there's an urgent need for all startups. So all startups really try to see, can we introduce AI in terms of, for example, logs, customer logs for customer reps, who try to find the queries for their customers. They often ingest now the log posts they get, find patterns, find solutions. Or at our bank, at Crown Agents Bank, we use AI for sanction screening. So there are lots of strong use cases, but I think in terms of adoption, we're still at the early stages, I think, of learning how to use it. And we all try to be faster and learn it quicker because we know there's an urgency behind it. We want to be, all of us, I think we want to be at the cutting edge, but I think it's very fast moving. That's why I guess we all try to keep up.
Yeah, I'd love to have been a fly on the wall of that particular discussion.
Yes.
But there is such a difference between somebody who says we are AI first because it looks wonderful on the website,
yes,
and them actually being AI first. There is a slight chasm between the two things.
Yes.
I hear a few rumbles of laughter in the room because I think everyone knows that. Babs, your thoughts on that landscape change?
I think I agree with a lot of what you've said there. And there's a plethora of advantages in there, but equally, I also try and balance it out with the challenges. There's a lot of the hype, but equally, when you start looking at the development rate and pace, I think those hypes are becoming realities a lot quicker than we expected to be. We're now talking about reaching level 4 in autonomous driving, driverless cars this year. So we can only not pay attention to the hype and the level of productivity it brings. Yes, it comes along with a lot of challenges as well. Things like how do you do fraud detection? How do you, in real time, you're talking about continuous customer support, something that doesn't sleep. The needs of the customers are evolving so quickly and the bar is being raised consistently. And how do you continue to evolve to meet this? And the advent of AI is just opening up different possibilities for it. It's such an exciting time, but it doesn't come without its challenges as well.
Absolutely. Mark?
Yeah, from a technical perspective, Comply, we use a lot of machine learning models, what were traditionally called machine learning models, and we're processing a lot of natural language. So things like adverse media, sanctions information, political information, and so on. So those models probably had about 30 to 40 of them in production. They're gradually being replaced by large language models. The machine learning models would take about 6 weeks to retrain if something changed. The large language models take about an hour to reprompt. So there is we are seeing significant possibilities. And what's really changed is the advent of large language models. The machine learning, the rest of the machine learning stuff has been around for a while. But then the potential applications of large language models are considerable. You can apply them to natural language, you can apply them to coding, you can apply them to anything really that can be expressed in words, and then off the back of that, achieve productivity gains. I think we are at the beginning of the cycle, not even in the middle of it. So I think the challenge from an executive point of view and from a leadership point of view is figuring out where you are in the cycle and matching speeds to that, and not trying to get in too far over your skis in terms of implementing things, because you won't achieve any gains from that. So we think a lot about kind of where are we, how do we operationalize this, can we get benefits from that, can we measure the benefits, and so on. I think you've got to be super careful right now.
Just going to add to Mark's point, actually. I think that speed of delivery is becoming much more of a key KPI, particularly in our world. You know, it's something we're starting to track that we haven't done before because, you know, like the guys have all said, the landscape is forever changing and the hype doesn't seem to fade. So I'll give you an example that we did something cool with AI. We took a process from 45 minutes down to 3 minutes. The first response from the crowd was, still takes quite long. Right, so
tough crowd.
Yeah, but that's because, you know, it wasn't a long project. Like I said, I think the days of multi-year technology change programs are almost forgotten now, because, you know, what we built today in 6 months' time is likely already legacy, or so it's changing the landscape of a lot of things. And I don't even know what an AI-first company is, let alone who is one.
Yeah.
Generally, the people who say that don't know either. It
Yeah.
just looks good on the website. That leads us on really nicely to where I want to go next. And there's various estimates about how much value Gen AI can add to the industry. You know, I've seen figures like 340 billion, but basically pick a large number and double it. Why is it such a game changer? Is it the speed that Sam was talking about there? Is it the increased security? There's so many different angles. All come at this in your own way. Why do you feel it's such a game changer? Susanne, I'll start with you.
Yeah. I would say, you know, the reason why Gen AI is such a game changer is because it makes such a big difference to certain ways of working and certain problems we're trying to solve. You know, ultimately it comes down to the business problems we want to solve and the challenges we face. And just to give you one example, a technology company, I know, you know, the CEO, they're working in deep tech, you know, deep tech, dual use technology, and they got an offer, a takeover offer from a Chinese company, and they wanted not to go for that. They wanted to defend themselves against this hostile takeover, and so they wanted to acquire. There's certain laws in the UK which protect technology companies from being taken over in those technologies, and so instead of hiring a lawyer, you know, for £10,000 plus to investigate these NISA laws, they used initially, you know, ChatGPT to get all this legal information, and so there was so much value, you know, being able to investigate, to get high quality know-how, you know, from Gen AI. In terms of FinTech Circle, when I think about our company, at FinTech Circle, you know, we invest in FinTech startups, and all of the startups we invest in, they use Gen AI to either for marketing purposes. That's often the easiest way, you know, when you generate blog posts, when you generate webinars, even for videos, you can use it obviously now, or for presentations. But you can also use it obviously for coding, you know, and you use it to cut your coding times. But I think often it's important not to overestimate the quality you get out, because often, you know, the best technology and developers, they often tell me you get 70% right, but the last 30% you still have to do yourself. You have to do, you know, quality assurance. And of course you can use other agents then to do multiple quality assurances from different parts, but it is not perfect yet. And that's very important. I mean, I've seen somebody yesterday who actually asked, you know, a question to Gen AI, and it was completely hallucination, you know, with the wrong footnotes, invented information. And so to some extent, one good advice I got is you should only ask Gen AI where you know if the outcome you get is actually right, if you can quality assure it yourself. Because otherwise, if you pass this information on, you might embarrass yourself, you know, because you just shared information which is not correct. And that's, I think, comes to the bigger question to how do we train young people, graduates who come out of university. We see so many jobs being cut now, but we need to train them to be able to understand, you know, what is right, what's wrong, that they can actually use Gen AI properly.
That's very, very important. Thank you very much, Susanne. Babs?
I think it's a game changer in the sense that if you look back in history, you talk about the Bronze Age, you talk about the ages. And I think at this moment in time, we're now in a different technology change, and a significant one of that. And I think agentic AI has effectively accelerated that. I mean, we've had, from a banking perspective, big banks. We've had, new banks, neobanks, everything trying to come in, and we've withstood that. But this one, if we do not catch up quickly and go into that agentic, that is a real existential threat, in the sense that you have agents, and we're going to get into the point where agents are talking to agents. Why would you need a bank in there, in that space? We will be disintermediated, and that will be the core. So for me, it's a real transformational change, and it's a real game changer we're getting to. And it's not just going to be limited to that space. We're going to be thinking about the society at large. We're now beginning to seriously consider UBIs, universal basic income, because people will be out of work. And it's not about that threat, but it's about there will be some categorizations of jobs that are just not going to be needed anymore. And we do not have enough skills to meet that. However, the transitional period is going to have some lags there. So what are we going to do about that? So it's not just going to be about in the banking, financial sector, it will be society at large.
And that is the slightly scary bit, where the entry-level jobs are being replaced by AI. Where does the next generation of middle managers, leaders, etc. come from? Because their job was taken by an agent. And what you're saying there about the gravitas of using the expression game changer, it's a bit like describing a footballer as world class. You shouldn't do it lightly. You absolutely shouldn't do it lightly. But this actually is, I always fit a football analogy, and I apologise. It works. But you need to emphasise how important it is. Mark, your thoughts?
Yeah, I support Leeds, so not really familiar with the concepts of the world-class footballer. I think in terms of the impact, we're already seeing the impact. It comes back to, again, what stage do you think you're at? It's capable of certain things, but not others, and it will become capable of far more. It's capable right now of automating what are typically fairly deterministic human-in-the-loop processes, like help desks, other kind of textual analysis, and so on. We have it in production. It's processing. We have Gemini LLMs in production processing 8 million articles a day, for example, right now. So it's working at scale. It's great. You look at help desks. You can operationalize that using AI without too much impact on the user, and I guess we'll go on to that, but also in a far more efficient way, in a far more structured way, and so on. In terms of the impact on society, I think we're not really seeing some of that yet, because a lot of those help desks are offshored, so we're not seeing impact on our society, but in the societies where those help desks are happening, I think the impact is not bubbled through yet to us. And but I think it will go on to something which is far more, as Babs just said, where the agents are talking to the agents, and that kind of sense of team augmentation and activity augmentation will go away. The systems will become far more autonomous and capable of far more, and that will take over far more tasks within technology, within fintech, within society.
That crossover between augmentation and just replacement, that's a really key point. And I freely admit I was slightly distracted trying to think of the last world-class player at Leeds. So I'd probably say Rio Ferdinand, but I know that's a name that goes down like a lead balloon.
Yeah, Rafinha.
I'd probably give that. Anyone else want to? No. Let's stick to the. Sam.
Not too much to add, really. I think why we see such massive numbers publicised as the impact is because I think the truth of it is it's applicable to everyone in every job in every domain, I think. So, you can take a little bit here and a little bit there, and then when you aggregate it up, you get to a huge number. I think under the scenes, it's just really good at reading and writing. Who knew that was such an in-demand skill, hey? But I think that's the key crux of it. I kind of agree probably more with Mark that I don't think we're there yet on the true agency agentic piece. I think it will come. I think for now, go after those process-led, usually more boring parts of the business. That's where all the opportunity is right now. Automate that, augment people in their roles, and then we'll see what the future brings.
Yeah, I do challenge the writing part of that. I did, as an experiment, challenged AI to write some questions for a panel unlike this, and it just sounded like an AI bot that read far too much LinkedIn, had been doom scrolling at a very late night. They weren't good questions. Anyway, let's move on to... and they also couldn't comment on world-class players at Ellen Road, so that's the difference. If anyone's listening from our events team, do not replace me quite yet. Let's move on to risk, if we can, and that's something I know we've touched on a little bit. And I'm going to destroy a very famous movie quote: with great technology comes great responsibility. Bonus points if you can link it to a film there. Are we opening up customers to too many potential breaches and risks, partly because of the speed of the adoption and as Babs, you were saying, how fast this technology is moving? Are we opening ourselves up to risk at all? Babs, I'll start with you on this one.
Yeah, it's just the short answer to that.
I did think that was going to be a multiple answer, but do carry on.
Yeah, I mean, if you think about it, one of the parts that a lot of people are not actually considering is the amount of power AI demands and what it's actually doing to the environment. For each prompt, it equates to God knows how many amount of energy that's going to consume.
That's one water bottle, apparently.
Well, exactly. Yeah. So that's one part, one aspect of it. Two, when you think about bias, yeah, it can quickly make it ingrained and scaled significantly so. So there is pick any positive to it, there's also the alternative to it. And in that space, yes, it's a lot of risk. And it's going to take a while before we begin to understand how we are going to get better at it. If you think about, we were talking about crypto coming through, quantum cryptography. And in that space, the threat there is not necessarily the positives that you can get out of quantum computing. It's about, well, it's going to destroy encryption. And then merge that with AI, artificial intelligence, in that space, you just scale it. What do we do? So we need to start preparing for that. So there's a significant amount of risks there as well.
Mark.
Yeah, again, echo Babs. I think there's one of the biggest challenges in this space is just kind of wading to the truth through all the kind of slop that comes out. I was at an event the other week where one of the executives from one of the hyperscalers, I'm not going to kind of name shame them, was saying, don't worry about the power issue. The US power grid always just runs at 40% of capacity because they have to size it for peak, and so and training, which is the heavy activity in AI, is preemptible, so you don't have to kind of run it at peak. Then the following day, I saw the opening a data center, which is about the size of Nevada. So you know, those two facts don't match. I think that look, I think there are obviously again issues for society and so on. In terms of your question, is it opening us up to security issues? There are new types of security threats, but I think security is always a race between the good guys and the bandits. And I don't think that's going to change. They're just new threats, new environment, new solutions. I think also, and I had this question at a conference the other week, if you weren't solving for the problem of your developers potentially going to Stack Overflow and copy and pasting code in that might have security issues and might have copyright issues and so on, if you didn't already have that in your development lifecycle, then kind of more fool you, because that's exactly what the LLMs are doing. But it's kind of standard practice that you should be dealing with that, and some of the stuff we would probably worry about most are actually lesser issues that kind of standard practice should be able to address.
Thank you. Sam?
Yeah, I think, you know, any innovation comes with risk, but like we say, it's just the pace of this. And this is probably where we at Shawbrook have seen AI not as a technical-led piece, it's very much a bank-wide. So, you know, we concentrate a lot of effort on bringing our risk, legal, HR colleagues along the journey with us. And I think the biggest challenge was just getting comfortable of what we want to use it for and what we don't want to use it for. So, you know, there's simple things Susanne's already, you know, human in the loop is key, you know, staying within your domain so you can kind of triage that answer where it comes out, like are the questions rubbish or not. I think there's some simple stuff you can do in there, and also be open to using AI to help mitigate some of the risks from AI. I think that's often a piece overlooked. So, you know, security in code, it's very good at checking its own code to a degree and looking for those flaws. So, you then get into this weird space, which is more agentic, where you've got AI checking AI that's checking AI, which I don't know if that sounds riskier than when you started, but there's opportunities there as well as just risks.
Thank you. Susanne.
Yeah, I agree with what everybody said already. And I would say just in terms of personal use, I don't know if anybody has used ChatGPT or any Mistral AI or any AIs where the AI disagreed with you. Did anybody use it where the AI disagreed with you? Because it normally never happens to me. It always agrees with me. It always compliments me. So that's what the AI is trained to do. LLMs are trained to almost compliment you. Yes, it's a very good question. Do you want to know more? So it helps you to go deeper and deeper on your journey. And if you are aware of that and you handle the question correctly from the beginning, it's nice because you get this confirmation, that you're on the right track and you're asking the right questions. But if you have got issues, maybe personal issues, or you're a vulnerable customer, in our financial services sector, it can be very dangerous because you might get into a rabbit hole, where you get negative confirmation. And we have seen, one person committing suicide in the States because using AI as a therapy tool. That's the biggest use case globally at the moment for Gen AIs to be used as therapy. People prefer, talking to the agent instead of talking to people and then getting the wrong advice. So it's very dangerous, it has lots of risks. And from a bank's point of view, I think it's about training, like you said, training employees how to use it, what to put in, and make sure that you've got your private framework, which is privately secured, AI only for your company, which can't be shared and can't be used to train the main model outside of your firm.
Okay, thank you.
I would just add to that, because I think that's a really good point, because I think you all need to be aware that you'll have a shadow AI capability at your firm. People will be using it out in the public domain, and that was a key decision we made was to partner with one of the companies to have an enterprise version, just to almost give us a bit of a funnel that at least we know people are using this and it comes with a degree of security. Still can't explain how it gets to an answer, but maybe one day. But I think that's a really good key. Leaning into that I think there's a stat out there that 40% of your workforce is already using it.
Slightly scary, right. One thing I did say to all of our panellists at the back of the room before we started was yesterday we were absolutely blown away with the number of questions we were getting from the room. So I said I'm going to allow a little bit of extra time for questions during panels. So I can guarantee that means one thing is going to happen now. I'm about to ask for questions and not a single person's going to put their hand up and I'm going to feel like an idiot. So pretend I didn't say that. Do we have any questions for the panel? Yes, we do. Thank goodness for that. I'm absolutely going to use that trick again in the future. That worked really well. Question at the back here.
Hello, I'm Ollie. I'm the CEO of a market and competitor research company called Behind Login. And we focus on sort of front-end customer experience. So my question was around how have you seen, or is there any interesting examples you've seen of where AI has been used to improve front-end customer experiences within fintech or financial services?
Any volunteers to take that one?
Good question, Ollie.
I mean, I've seen it in terms of chatbots, using chatbots, because in the past, chatbots were just so bad. You never got the response you needed. But now using AI, using chatbots, I see it much more, much better. And the biggest, I think, news last week was that we met Helena Wardle. She's the CEO of a fintech company called Money Means, and they are also a B2C company, and they created an AI bot which passed the financial planning exams. So the official UK financial planning, financial advisor exams, and this was the first time that an AI bot passed the exam which only human financial planners have to do. So this is a unique example where you can then get, certified financial advice through the AI chatbot via this fintech company.
That's interesting. We are doing just that right now. And the good thing is that the FCA is also partnering in that space and providing sandboxes for you to come and try out.
Exactly.
And we are building things to make sure that it's very conversational. And you can see the bigger boys in that space who are very, very advanced. The experience that you get in conversing with any of the, be it ChatGPT, Now 5, DeepSeek or anything. It's so conversational, and it's so you keep it very, very short, as if you can ask very simple, short sentence questions and the way it's going to interact, and it has that empathy. So those are the things that you ensure that you're building into it. It's not an easy task, but it's where everybody is going now, especially when you're looking at agentic AI.
Yes.
So I'd like to know where all these nice chatbots are suddenly appearing. My personal experience isn't that great. We're a B2B, so we have a different focus. Again, it comes back to the stage we think things are at. If you fast forward maybe 18 months where the agents are acting far more autonomously, they're not going to need user interfaces. The robots, actually, the user interfaces get in the way. They're going to be talking to APIs. So from a kind of development point of view, we're trying to figure out what speed that is going to move at. There's an interesting phenomenon at the moment, though, because you're inserting these agents into teams in the forms of augmentation. So there's a demand really to anthropomorphize the agents. So there's a team of 8 people, and suddenly there's a robot called Bob in the middle of it, who's acting within the user interface. But that will go away eventually. But right now, you've got to kind of, again, it's a question of matching speeds and figuring out how you fit it into a hybrid human AI system. We think that 18 months forward, something of that order, probably less demand for interactive user interfaces and more demand for an explanatory user interface. Tell me what's happened. Explain this in the aggregate. Things like that.
Thank you. We had some more hands going up in the middle, so I think the next one was there. Then I think we had another one at the front. I'll come here next.
I have a question for Mr. Mark Watson. I wanted to know, given the how AI is increasingly embedded into onboarding, transaction monitoring, do you think that AI model risks, such as bias, explainability, or any data drift, should now be somehow explicitly included into any enterprise risk assessment of any regulated entity?
It depends how it's being used, to be honest. We have a kind of strict layering between where the LLMs are being used and where we're using LLMs. And we also have governance an internal governance model across everything. But that layering means that all we're doing is processing certain forms of text. We're not using it for in a way that could turn into hallucination, per se. So right now, I'm not worried about it. Probably in a year's time, I might be very worried about it. So again, as the systems become more autonomous and more trusted to act on their own right, that layering may become less permeable. So I think that's where that's where the worries come in. The other part of it, from a data governance point of view, is it's really important when you look at your actual data, and this is less so the LLMs, but the kind of data entities we're dealing with. What was the history whereby that piece of data formed, and what's the provenance for it, and what stages did it go through? So we worry a lot about that. And I think that the big question going forward is, right now, what's your data governance model? Going forward, what's your model governance model? We have a model governance committee that meets and checks, for changes in the model and whether it will change our thinking on that, and changing our use of the model, and then whether it will change our thinking on that. So we're actively looking at it, but it's not the stage where you would formalize it into a policy right now, I think. Not for us in terms of our use of it.
Thank you, Mark. I think we had some more hands go up. I can't remember where they were. I think there was one in the middle and then one over there.
Hi there. I'm just wondering if any of you are engaged in a kind of KY agent, KYA. Is this something on the radar?
So we're building an investment agent, and I mean, to the point about risk, it's one of the fundamental cornerstones that we're having to factor in there in terms of 3 lines of defense. from a governance perspective and all that. So again, when you talk about KYA, I'm assuming you're talking about know your agent. Yeah, again, it's things that you have to declare upfront to say whoever is interacting, you are interacting with an agent. I think that's just going to be part of the governance in there. And again, with all the controls and the governance, that you have to manage it, and you can never take the human out of the loop. This is critical in that space when you think about drift and hallucinations and all of that. These are fundamentals that has to be in there, especially when you're into the agent space as opposed to a Gen AI.
Just wanted to add, I was at another conference a few weeks ago, and where I saw for the first time almost like an agent supermarket. So they had lots of agents. There was more than 20 different agents. You could choose for which task you wanted an agent. And it was, I think the package was £50,000 for 5 agents per year was the fee, And so I said, just show me one, show me the sales agent. And so you had to type in basically a lead, the information of the name and the company and title, and then it generated kind of how to approach this potential cold lead to make this person a warm lead. And I thought this was the first time I saw this agent supermarket, and I don't know how the quality, I've not yet tested it all, but those things will emerge. But you're right, one has to check how good are they, because you just don't know until you try it. I think it's often trial, before you buy. Yeah.
I'll just add very quickly, this is why I think it's a company-wide problem that you need to incorporate the likes of HR in. I know other companies are looking at kind of agent onboarding. When we start to go to agency, does that then make them almost an employee? Accountability is a big sticking point. And if the agent goes wrong, who's accountable? Risk and banks like to know who's accountable for things. Yes. So hence, I think you've got to bring in those other departments, domains to start thinking about this, because I agree. I think it won't be long until an agent, there's talking about digital employees already, augmenting the existing workforce, so you've got to get those guys involved early as part of that.
Yes.
Thank you. I think we had another question just over here, over there. Thank you.
Tristan Prince from NATO. There was a really interesting session yesterday from Nick at Synergy Bank, and he was talking about a human digital bank, which I thought was a really nice term. I'm keen to hear from the panel what your perspective is around AI alongside humans, and that kind of, is AI the silver bullet that solves the problems, or how do you see that panning out over the next couple of years, the kind of interaction?
I can start with that one if you like. So we use, I don't know if it's a good analogy or not, but AI is very much, the 6 rungs on a 10-rung ladder. So use it to, automate the mundane, augment your current roles very much as a partnership. I think that's one space where we're seeing it working very well. I think the other aspect is, again, I'm a skeptic of chatbots. I don't, going back to the customer service questions, I think there might be a change shortly that your actual customer service improves when you can actually talk to people, right? The first thing I try and do with a chatbot is trying to get to a human. I don't know, even though I know how the thing works, I still can't get to one. So I think it's freeing up that kind of human capability to do the more personal interaction, complex thinking, engagement. We shouldn't be taking minutes in a meeting anymore. We should be listening and engaging in that meeting, because AI doing that. So for me, I think that's where you need to start and follow that curve out.
Yeah, I think as I say, we're in the augmentation stage for some things where you need humans as governance. I was saying to somebody last night, I'm at the stage now where a salesman can use Claude to concoct a convincing product document, but I don't have a bunch of robot developers to produce that product. So it's not something where you can have a kind of entire carbon-free life cycle for everything. The issue is going to be at what speed do humans come out of activities, and then what happens with what's left. And to the question here, how does that get governed, and what are the guardrails around it? And I think all of those are going to be kind of challenges. Right now, it's I think what you're seeing in the industry and people selling agents whether it be in supermarkets or marketplaces, whatever, it is agents that look like they're going to enter your team as act like and represent a human, NPCs in gaming terms. That is, but that will go away.
And just maybe to do one thing I want to say, some of those agents are really still very poor quality, you know, and you probably see that in your own inbox when you get emails by salespeople which are written by an agent where it says DX. You know, at the bottom it says signature hashtag. You know, so those, I mean, I'm getting so many emails where I think that they have been generated by an agent who's not properly trained. You know, who doesn't know how to insert the first name, and then it so obviously backfires because you would never want to work with a company who uses this type of low quality approach. So it's very important to check the quality before you engage.
I think it's here to stay, and it's only going to deepen. There's a case of a company, a consultancy company recently, that the client is suing them because they produced a report, sent it over to him, and he checked it online, and it was written by an agent or a chatbot. Yes. So again, this is already happening, and it's only going to, you know, it's going to just scale as we go further. So it's a reality.
Okay. Well, thank you very much for the questions. And thank you for not letting me down in that particular circumstance. I'm very, very grateful. We are going to have to wrap up because we have a red light flashing at us at the front of the stage. Two key points I'd like to make before we wrap up. I did check with ChatGPT. Apparently Rio Ferdinand was the last world-class player to play for Leeds. Close mentions were Mark Viduka, Harry Kewell, Rafinha, and apparently Calvin Phillips. That's what ChatGPT knows. And finally, my only last plea would be if anyone is writing on LinkedIn about being here today, and particularly about being in this session, just to prove you didn't ask AI to write it for you, could you all include either a film or music reference, just to prove that you wrote it? And the more random, the better. Thank you very much. Okay. A huge thank you to our panel, to Sam, to Suzanne, to Babs, and to Mark.
Thanks, guys.
Thank you.